Hello and welcome to this final episode of 2021 of the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast. This is DJ and I'm going to be your host for this week. I have the absolute pleasure of being joined by not one, not two, not three, but four of our listeners. It has been an incredible year in Indian cricket. It's been incredible for many reasons. And one of them is the Discord community that we've built over the last year and a half. So this week, we thought it would be amazing to have a chat with all the guys that have been so super active on all the highs and lows on that Discord server. And I put a call out. Four listeners wrote in immediately saying, let's do this. And so I have with me Uday, Achal, Shrikar and Arvind. And if you guys are on our Discord server, and if you're not, you should definitely join it. You'll know these guys almost as friends by now because you've come across them so much that you're, that at least I feel like I already know you guys. Achal, of course, lives in London, so I've met him many times. And he plays cricket with me. But I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves for the pod. I'll come to you first. Uday, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you started listening to Edges and Sledges.
Yep. Hey, everyone. So my name is Uday. 26, big cricket fan, obviously, avid Indian team supporter and a Mumbai Indians fan, as those on the Discord probably know and hate me for. I think I discovered the pod, when I was living in New York. Not much of a cricket community there. Was following, I think, during the World Cup or just leading into the 2019 World Cup. Just randomly searched, actually it's really funny, I randomly just searched Dhoni in podcast titles and your podcast came up pretty early days, I think, in the pod. Listened to one episode and was hooked. Just, whether I was at the gym or just, doing chores at home, always on in the background every week. Gave me a way to kind of keep up with everything and almost feel like I was part of a conversation. So big fan, kudos to you guys. Hope it lives long and appreciate all the work you guys do.
Uday, you haven't told us about this, but you are an international cricketer in your own right. So tell us a little bit about that. Don't be shy.
No, that's speaking too much. I think the highest I've reached was just under 19 for the UAE, which is where I grew up. But nothing to write home about. Not great stats, but yeah, I did play as an opening batter for I think a year and a half at the under 19 level, and previously, under 16s, under 13s as well was when I started. But yeah.
We're putting you on the list of our international cricketer guests. Don't worry about that. But it's more international experience than any of us on the pod have. So thank you for joining us. I'm going to come next to Arvind because Achal and Shrikar you've met before. So I'm going to come to Arvind. Arvind, do you want to introduce yourself to the listeners?
Yeah. Thank you guys for having me here. I have to admit I'm not as active on the Discord channel as the rest of the folks here, but I'll take that. I'll take it with the stride. So I'm Arvind. I'm I work for Prime Video. I'm based in Seattle at the moment, and Seattle actually has a pretty vibrant cricketing community. We go play cricket every weekend and all that. So it's been a lot of fun complementing all of that with the Edges and Sledges podcast as well. Similar story as Uday, benign searches for something cricket related, and first episode onwards, it's just hooked from that point onwards. I had to go back and listen to all the previous ones as well, and it's been a blast following you guys' journey and just living through the highs and lows, in your lens as well. And particular shout out to Abhishek Mukherjee from the previous episode. It was a treat listening to everything that he had to say, including the little tidbit about his mistaken identity and the wars he has to go through that one. The troubles that we have in the 21st century. But yeah, that's me. It's been a schoolboy cricketer. It hasn't gone beyond the school team, but I'm just glad I'm 36 and still playing cricket right now. So I'll take my wins there.
Absolutely brilliant. And I'm glad that the Dhoni title brought Uday there. I don't know what title brought you to the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast, but clearly the search engine optimization titling is working.
Absolutely.
Well, Achal, you've been on the pod before, man. I'm really glad to have you back on it. It's great to see you back on. For the listeners who missed the Delhi Capitals episode, which was, I think, one of the best episodes we did, where you listed out all the players that Delhi had traded. Do you want to just introduce yourself, where you're from, and what you're up to?
Yeah, thanks, DJ. It's great to be back. Yeah, I'm Achal. I live in London, not too far from DJ. We play cricket together most weekends, just fun. I am an avid DC fan, which is how I found the podcast. I think the first or second episode I heard was the Bakwaskar Awards. um, and yeah, again, from that point on, pretty hooked. I think for me, the pod is pretty important because it allows me to kind of disconnect and still consume cricket content. Like passive consumption, more active consumption is done on Discord, so please join. Yeah, it's good to be back. A little bit, since everyone's been talking about their cricketing stuff, I was also a schoolboy cricketer, failed schoolboy cricketer because I was pulled out after the 9th grade. Yeah, I started playing cricket in New York again, and now I'm based in London. I like to tell people that I moved because I was offered a contract by DJ's club, which is totally not true. But yeah, good to be back, DJ.
Yeah, it's great to have you back. And we've got Prime Video and Spotify both represented. So I'm looking for that huge deal coming my way. Shrikar, you've been on the pod before as well as an RCB fan. So yeah, tell us a little bit about what you've been up to since. And yeah, for the listeners who haven't caught that episode yet.
So I'm Shrikar and from Bangalore. I've been hooked to the podcast from say 1.5 years maybe. I've been listening to it since. It was basically I got connected to it because it was more fun, as if you're speaking to a friend, and the conversation went with the flow, and it's been very nice since then. And I think I really enjoyed the podcast, except few episodes here where and my RCB fan, if he doesn't like few things, then it was very nice being there. Yeah, that's about it.
Awesome, awesome. So we are here because we had the idea of doing a 2021 wrap. So we're going to talk about what was actually an incredible year in Indian cricket. We've just seen India play the first day against South Africa. KL Rahul has scored 122, not out. India finished at 272 for 3. But we will talk about that next week when we have the gang back together. This is all about looking back on the last year at 2021. It was a year where you had COVID interruptions, you had tours being abandoned halfway through, but we also had a lot of incredible cricket. Now, obviously, we're an Indian cricket podcast, so there may be a little bit of an Indian cricket bias. And being the Rishabh Pant show, maybe he might come up a couple of times. I don't know. But we'll also try and talk about some other highlights. I know Shrikar is particularly keen to talk about Joe Root, the number 2 batsman in the world at the moment, number 2 test batsman in the world behind Manas Labuschagne. But we'll let him talk about that when that starts. But the year started with India having won the Boxing Day test. Ajinkya Rahane scoring 100 in the last Boxing Day test. He seems to only score runs on Boxing Day, weirdly enough, which is, I don't know, he scored runs today, which is Boxing Day when we're recording. And he scored that 100 at the Boxing Day test last year. So maybe that's once a year freak occurrence. But let's not get into that. We went into the Sydney test, Achal. And I know you've picked the Australia tour and Rishabh Pant as your specialism for this year. So how do you explain the Sydney test match? There was racism issues. There was if you remember, there was the Siraj moment where he went and complained about racism from the stands. And there was a point at which it looked like India had lost that series or weren't going to win that series. Talk us through that Sydney test and then the Gabba test. I mean, what an incredible way to finish that series, right?
Yeah, it was, I think starting the year off that way was incredible. I think in general, the second leg, especially of the Australia tour, for me stands out because it was characterized by that Indian team very clearly, like outputting performances that were greater than the sum of its parts, right? You had a ragtag bowling attack, especially at the Gabba, and injured one-legged Navdeep Saini, Natarajan bowling his 125-kilometer-an-hour pies, and somehow we still won that test, which is, I'll come to that. But I think, yeah, that's what the second leg of that Australia tour was for me. It stood out because everyone put their hand up at key points in time, and no one seemed to back down. Like, we were in their den, we were like multiple men down by the end of it. But I don't think there was ever a moment where we were like, I don't think we can do this. It was the Indian fans on Twitter and Discord and other things I was just like, we're done for. But yeah, I don't think the team ever gave up, and it was incredible to just watch it unfold. Sydney and then Gabba as well.
And what were the particular highlights from those two test matches? Of course, I know we've got Uday on the show as well. Uday, maybe you want to talk us through Hanuma Vihari and why you're such a big fan of the man.
Yeah, those on the Discord know that I am self-appointed president of the Hanuma Vihari fan club. Thoughts on his non-selection in this test aside, I think he has been a tremendous servant. He's always been coming in challenging situations, even from his debut, thrusted in to open the innings in England in seeming nippy conditions on a green top, and performing well. I think he got a half century on that tour. From considering the fact that he's almost exclusively played in overseas tests, I think his only home appearance came at home in South Africa after Mayank and Rohit had already piled on the runs, and he came on when we were declaration batting. I think just speaking about him, Hanuma Vihari, the batsman, his domestic numbers speak for themselves. They're absolutely insane. Averages 55, I think, in first class cricket, has just scored piles of runs at home, has proven himself. And I think, he does get a bit hard done by, not really for any fault of his own. I mean, a year ago, no one would have even thought that middle order of Pujara, Kohli, and Rahane was even touchable. But now with someone like Vihari in the wings, Vihari with his, I think, immaculate technique, his ability to fend off the new ball when conditions are challenging for the batters, I think he would slot in perfectly anywhere 3 to 5. And some of that resolve and grit, to tie into Sydney was shown there. Him and Ashwin at the crease. Jadeja, the other last recognized batsman, was, I think, with an elbow injury, a doubt to bat. But the performance him and Ashwin put on with a broken hamstring for Vihari. And I forgot what Ashwin's injury was. I think it was back related.
Back strain. And Jadeja, exactly. I think, had a broken thumb.
Yeah, exactly. To last, I think, what was the entire last session, with all of Australia's tactics ending up toothless, just, blocking. I think it was almost comical after a couple hours where, they'd play a drive into no man's land where regularly they could have easily run 3 and they'd just be standing there. Some of those cute moments of them sharing a thigh guard, hobbling over to the other side after they'd crossed over to give the other the thigh guard. And what was, particularly enjoyable to us was seeing Tim Payne and the Aussies just boil down when that was happening, because obviously, it was burning some valuable time. To pull that off was, an amazing escape, I think is what we call it. And it's kind of sad that he hasn't gotten a game since then.
Indeed, but he put his body on the line. Ashwin put his body on the line. They both sat out for the next game. Ashwin was told by Tim Payne, who's no longer captain of Australia, see you at the Gabba, Ash. Achha, what happened at the Gabba? As you said, we had a toothless bowling attack, but Shardul Thakur came in. Natarajan came in. We had Navdeep Saini on one leg. Kuldeep obviously still didn't get a game, but how do you explain the Gabba phenomenon? You had the India C string team, G string team. I don't know what team this was, but the Gabba test, the G, the incredible fortress since 1989, I think it was 1989 that they hadn't lost there. How do you explain that phenomenon? How do you explain India winning that test match? What happened?
So I think a couple of things happened. Prior to the Gabba test, especially with Tim Payne and his silly antics at the SCG, given his verbal battles with Ashwin and whatever. That plus all the lead up to the Gabba, with that being their fortress and all the very partisan press that was coming out right before that test match. I think the Aussies just like psyched themselves out of that competition before it even started. They were under more pressure coming into it than India was. It felt like, especially because it was very clear going into well before the Gabba test that Vihari wasn't going to play it, and Ashwin was very, very doubtful because he could barely walk back after that blockathon. So I think they psyched themselves out, and then like on the back of that, the RC string, G string side, as you call it, DJ, like they turned up with this "we have nothing to lose" attitude, and I think that was very obvious when Shardulkar and Washi basically took them on. I think they made Australia's attack look like a plate division Ranji Trophy attack. Take that, karaoke.
Canteen
but
11,
also
canteen.
the Canteen 11. But then like I actually just to psych myself up, I watched a couple of highlights from that last test, that first innings when Washi and Shardul took it on, and it's surreal. Honestly, it just feels like the Aussies were giving them throwdowns. That cover drive on the up that Shardul hit, the two no-look sixes that Sundar had. I think the shot of the series for me was that really springy drive that Sundar hit off Stark, and he just stood there watching the ball race away through the covers. That was what you call just counter-attacking, and they did it because they had nothing to lose. They knew they were playing with a depleted team. They knew that if they could compete on a semi-regular basis through those 5 days, that would be a big achievement. So they just went for it. And I think for me, that is the pinnacle of Indian Test cricket, despite the England series TBD win. I think that's up there for me, just because it shows that we turn up to compete. And I don't think we're like teams of yore, we're no longer psyched by opponents before the series starts anymore.
Absolutely. And just to quickly chime in there also, a testament to how the Ashes is going right now, that went earlier, right? It's a comparable conditions, and you had a completely different team that has years and years of experience competing with Australia in Australia. And it's night and day of a difference between this G-string team versus the top of the line England team performing in Australia. And the scorecard just does not do justice, right? For the context that went with the series. Like the second test, it's a draw. Okay, you have a set of scores that there, but the drama of having Shardul and Washington Sundar bat it out. It's just, you'll have to have seen either highlights or been there to have realized it.
I still can't believe that no one's spoken about Rishabh Pant. This is shocking.
Yeah, I was coming to that. I think despite other than the win and just the no holds barred kind of takedown that we saw at the Gabba, I think the biggest thing for me was seeing really young players who are still on the up and up put their hands up when needed, when people didn't expect them to perform. I know Pant was coming off a really great knock at the SCG, and people almost didn't expect him to back that up with another match-winning knock, but he did. Because he got out pretty tamely in the first innings at the Gabba as well. I think just edged a gully or something. And yeah, I think for me, Shubman in the second innings of that Gabba test, Pant in that second innings of the Gabba test, Shardul and Washi in the first innings, those four together made me think all right, we're so wary of losing the Pujaras, the Rahanes, the Rohits, which is going to be gutting for Indian cricket when it does happen. But I think we're in okay hands here. If we have 20-year-olds, 21-year-olds coming in and just being completely unafraid of the situation and the context of the game and playing as if it's their backyard, amazing.
What I absolutely love is that we've gone 20 minutes already and we haven't even gone past January yet. It's that's how much that series has meant to Indian fans, I think. And it was sensational. It was it made us stay up all night. Achal and I, we probably stayed up all night for a month, right? Watching this series. It was something special. It was probably once in a lifetime that we got to watch that winning shot trickle across the boundary from Rishabh Pant. And I mean, the entire nation probably just exploded in joy spontaneously. But there was more to come. This was only January. That's the most amazing part. And then we went away and played some tests at home against England. And the World Test Championship, people were talking about maybe India can make the final, that the final was, they changed the system. India were topping the table before that, but then things changed and they may or may not have made it. The draw at Sydney was important because we didn't lose points there. Shrikar, we go to Chennai. And I mean, it's traditionally a place where Indian teams steamroll opposition. I think it's where the last time we played England in Chennai, Karun Nair got 300. Kohli basically waited for him to get 300, knowing that he would bowl England out in about 50 or 60 overs. This was after England had piled on 450 plus in the first innings. So Chennai is not a place where Indian teams go expecting to lose a match. What happened in that first test? Because I think you've maybe become a Joe Root fan of late.
Yeah, basically we just laid a road and expected our paces to take a lot of wickets. But then we had someone called Joe Root in the store waiting for a double hundred again. So England score 578 and Joe Root scores 218 in that match. And we knew by then we couldn't do it. So we scored 337. And I think Anderson and Archer takes 2 first. And again, England come back and score 178. And we were bowled out for 192 and the game was done. So Joe Root just basically took over the match, scores a magnificent double hundred. He kept reverse sweeping Ashwin. He didn't sweep a lot to Ashwin, but he kept reverse sweeping Ashwin. And I think it was one of the best knocks you would see in India of a foreign player. Like Kevin Peterson obviously has scored at 170 or 180, but this was also right up there because just coming into India in the first match, whatever the pitch is, still you're facing a very good bowling attack, and you scored a double hundred in the first match. So I mean that is really great.
So what's changed for Joe Root? Because before this series started, before the year started, actually, the criticism at Joe Root that was leveled at Joe Root was he got to 50 but didn't get to 100. He put all of that behind himself this year. He scored 100 after 100. I mean, okay, he got 50 in this game, and he hasn't got 100 yet on the Australian tour, but I think he got a double hundred against Sri Lanka as well, helping them win that series. He got a double hundred in the first test against India. I think he got 200s in 2 test matches that Achal and I were there to watch at Nottingham and Lords, which was not the best feeling in the world. But it was class. And so what has he changed? Or has he not changed anything? And I think that's just going his way now.
I mean, before that, he had a very good practice in Sri Lanka, facing Wimbledon, and what's his name? So he scores a double century again there in the first match, and another 186 or 180 on in the second match. So he had a very good preparation for India, I feel, because Sri Lanka's pitches are turning a little more than India's. So I think he hasn't changed anything a lot. He's just a lot calmer now. You don't see those rash shots every now and then, which he used to play before. Now, I mean, the way he swept Wimbledon was very nice. I mean, we don't see a lot of people inside the subcontinent playing those kind of shots, and he came and showed us how you could play those shots without taking a lot of risk. It was not every boundary was going to 4, or it was not scoring big runs, but then the sweeps were so good. I mean, I was a fanboy after that Chennai innings because he kept reverse sweeping Ashwin so well. He had a very good preparation for India. I think he has had a very good year.
Okay, clearly we have a Joe Root fanboy. I'm glad about that. I mean, he had his moment in the sun. England went 1-0 up. And I think we've talked a lot about sweeping, but we haven't talked about reverse sweeping, which is where this series will end, with Rishabh Pant reverse sweeping Jimmy Anderson over the slips. But let's get there. Let's get there. For me, actually, this was a series which I really, really enjoyed. First of all, it was on Freeview in England. So I got to watch it on Channel 4. I didn't have to run around figuring out which subscription I had to get. You just plugged in your iPad and you watched it. Secondly, the timing was great, and India were hurt after that first test match. And so the next pitch that they rolled out was one that would turn. And it turned from ball one. Rohit scored a brilliant 161, I think. It was brilliant. He just smashed the England bowlers all over the place. And then Akshar Patel and Ashwin. Akshar came in for the second test match and he showed he was a notch above Shahbaz Nadeem, right? But the second test match was Ashwin's test match. There was a lot of criticism leveled at the pitch. Oh, it's spinning from ball one. Oh, they've done. When a number 8 scores 100 against you and the game goes into day 4, there's not much you can say. And it was Ashwin's home crowd. He took wickets, scored runs. England were beaten. We were back to 1-1. We then go to Ahmedabad for the day-night test match, for which they've rested Broad and Anderson, and all of this stuff has gone down, right? So they've like, okay, we this is our big chance to beat India and go, because England needed to win 3-1. India only needed to win 2-1. So England we're gonna blow them away with our pace, and I think Archer played this test match as well. So it was Archer, Broad, and Anderson. The test match finished in 2 days. Akshar Patel took all the wickets. And England Twitter went into absolute meltdown. And this was genuinely one of my favorite phases, where it was like, the pitch is so bad. It doesn't matter. You look back on this year, Joe Root is a good batsman. Everyone else, and I think there's a Jared Kemba article that came out today. Everyone else is basically shit. And the way he puts it, extras are the second highest scorer for England this year. They've scored 6% of England's runs, which is just a shocking stat if you think about it. I think, sorry, I'll double check that, whether extra the second or third highest scorer.
Third after Burns.
That's what I thought. It's an absolutely shocking stat. And I'll put a link to this Jared Kemba article. It's just, you've got Joe Root, and he's done various. He's done bar charts. He's done like a graph. He's done a pie chart. It's just brilliant. So this 2-day test match gets over. Everyone goes into meltdown about pitches. And then you have another test match where Akshar Patel takes another bunch of wickets and India wins 3-1 and make it to the World Test Championship final. England, basically, I think we put out an episode saying England burn against Stern. And it was just the most enjoyable feeling that one could get. It's like when we used to get laid out green seamers. Abhishek, in the last episode, basically said, South Africa, when we were bowled out in 96 for 166, they thought that we'd got too many runs. That's the level of pitch that was given to India in that series. So when you come to India and you expect a road, which is what they got in the first test match, I think it's fair for us to give you turning pitches at the end of that. Anyway, where this ended in the fourth test match was Rishabh Pant. The series hangs in the balance. India about 130 runs ahead with 4 wickets down. Rishabh Pant, the brash brat, okay, he scored a couple of good innings against Australia, fine, but does he have it in him to play a mature innings? And for me, this was one of the highlights of the year, where Rishabh Pant put his head down and he ground out 100. There's no other way of putting that. Until he knew that India was safe, until he was in his 70s, 80s, he didn't free up. He just batted within himself. He wasn't hitting everything out of the park. And I think he only scored 103. But that included the reverse sweep over slips of Anderson. Shrikar, did you want to add something? Are you sure? Okay. I was saying, so it included the reverse sweep of Anderson, and that in the final analysis helped us win that test match and get into the World Test Championship final. So for me, that Rishabh Pant innings of 103, it ended, yes, he was caught by, I think, Joe Root off Anderson. So Anderson had the last laugh, but it showed us that the boy had become a man. And that reflected in him being given the captaincy when Iyer was injured of the Delhi Capitals. And he's sort of now being seen as a more mature, more dependable cricketer, which for a podcast that has supported him from a long time through his highs and lows, it felt great after Australia, because obviously, like, we got a lot of shit every time Pant came out to bat. We would get tagged in all these tweets when he got out playing a silly shot, right? But then he did Australia. That was a good feeling, but you didn't quite know whether he had it in him to play a long innings, and I think this proved it to me. So I felt this was a special innings and a real highlight for the year. Anyway, India going to the World Test Championship final. Everybody knows we lost that, so let's not dwell on that very much. I don't know, Arvind, do you want to give us some lowlights? Because I know you said that it's only fair that we do lowlights as well of the year, because it's a year-end wrap. So
you got me there. but yeah, it's one of those damn squibs, right? Where there's all of this hype about it, and I mean, deep down inside, there was a sneaking feeling that, come on, it's New Zealand and it's India going there. But you had to sort of, keep that, brush that aside and focus on the regale the World Test Championship final. But yeah, beyond that, I don't know what else to say. It's been to me, it was it actually was a little bit better than in terms of India's resistance compared to the past outings that we've had in New Zealand. So definitely give that to them. But it was a weird timing. It isn't something that you would even in terms of prep, right? We went there. We did what the best we could given the terms that we were dealt with. But this might be controversial, but I do think that if you had a year-long tournament that gauged you based on series performances, then just deciding the winner just based on one match was kind of lopsided, in my opinion. You should have had a series there, given the teams a fair chance. Because all of these series that we were just talking about, right? If they were all one match affairs, we would not have gotten the complete picture. We would not have gotten the joy of Test cricket, which brings the underdog back in and gives a fighting chance, and all of that we kind of didn't get to see as a finals. But I do hope that that changes. I know it prolongs the format, but hey, it's one more series. Of course, go figure out your scheduling. Teams, at least the major ones, have A, B, C, G level teams. So I'm sure we can figure something out.
yeah, absolutely. And interesting you said damn squib, because I was there for the first day of the World Test Championship final and it only rained. So that was genuinely a damn squib. But we've talked literally almost exclusively about Test cricket. But in the midst of all this, and Uday, maybe I'll come to you on this one, a certain Ishan Kishan made a debut for India. Being the in-house Mumbai Indians fan.
That was a very memorable T20 series. I think some of the highlights was that debut game from Kishan. Brilliant half century, just attacking from ball one. We also saw Surya Kumar Yadav, another Mumbai Indians' very own, finally get what many will say a much overdue call up to the side. His first game, nothing to write home about. I think he didn't get a bat, dropped a catch while fielding. But the second game comes onto the pitch at number 3, his favorite position, and just lofts one over. Fine leg, one of his trademark shots, as those who watch the IPL will have seen him, and just goes on to a magnificent half century. Brilliant debut, just showing the riches of I was going to say IPL, but the riches of Mumbai Indians realistically. I think across the ODI and T20 series, I think someone pointed out that every one of the Indians in the Mumbai Indians starting 11 featured, including Krunal Pandya and Rahul Chahar. So, but the MI bias aside, it was a fantastic series, the T20 series. I thought we looked pretty good going into the T20 World Cup, which I'm sure we'll come to later. And I think even that final game was particularly memorable with Rohit and Kohli opening, just blistering us to, I can't remember, but I think it was like 220, upwards of 220. Some excellent cricket.
Shrikant, do you have anything to add to that? I know you put your, no? You sure? Okay, cool. Right, so we don't actually have a CSK fan because I'm sure before we got to the World Test Championship final, Arvind, are you a CSK fan? Should we do it now? Should we do it later? I mean, obviously CSK after their disaster 2020 went and won this year's IPL, beating everyone in sight. MS Dhoni, 18 of 7 to put the Delhi Capitals out, and then masterminding a win against the KKR. I know. I mean, maybe I should just let Uday and Arvind talk for a bit. What do you have to say to Uday, Arvind, as a CSK fan to Mumbai fan?
Hey, it's tough luck, man. I'm trying to be really,
No, we don't be diplomatic. Don't be diplomatic. Tell him what you feel.
But hey, we just turned up to the party, man. It's one of those where I personally feel this was in the making from the last 2 or the last 3 or 4 matches in the previous edition of the IPL, where CSK has nothing left to lose, but you sort of saw the spark. You sort of saw some kind of turnaround.
Youngsters showed spark.
And yeah, exactly. The Spunks did it, right? In the dad army, you had a new blood coming in, and sure enough, right? That momentum sort of took us through the next edition, and just blew every team under the dust. And so so did we do with Mumbai. Left them by the wayside. But yeah, that's definitely a series to remember. I'd say the comeback series was it comes close to that to a certain degree, just because how terrible 2020 was. But yeah, proud to be a CSK fan from day one. Bleed yellow and blue, I guess. Yeah.
Uday, can I just ask you, for a team that was supposed to be the greatest ever T20 team ever assembled, right? It was like Avengers. CSK has won more titles and reached more finals than Mumbai since 2018. How has that happened?
Look, I mean, I still maintain that 2020 squad, I know it's the same squad, was the best IPL team, I think, in the history of franchise cricket. But, you had a combination of things. The first leg of the IPL, the pitches they played on, I wouldn't say the scheduling is to blame, but I think, the MI team weren't able to adapt to the conditions as they probably would have. They were playing on Wankhede roads that we love. I think, we had a couple of things about Hardik Pandya not bowling and not finding form with the bat. Same with Krunal. I think those two just in the middle order were very crucial to the whole combination. Them not firing really put us on the back burner. Surya Kumar Yadav, I think probably the most hyped person going into the tournament. I think we had a poll on our call out on our Discord for people to predict their orange cap winners prior to the tournament. And if I'm not wrong, I think 80% of people had picked Sky. So a combination of things, but it's all right. We'll give this one to CSK. And we'll see how Ambani's boys do in the auction and 2022 tournament to come.
Yeah, so 2 to CSK, 2 to Mumbai Indians, 1 more final to the CSK, losing to the Mumbai Indians. So pretty close stuff there. Of course, the RCB fans and the Delhi Capitals fans just look and laugh. Shrikar, Achal and I are just enjoying these 2 champion teams. Fans just poke fun at each other. Arvind, you can have the last word, like CSK and Dhoni.
I do have to say, though, I absolutely, despite not being a Delhi fan, I loved how you guys championed it in the podcast. The hope that you gave to the listeners kind of turn folks even to believers, and it was a shame the way it turned out. But honestly, I think I felt for Delhi. I still remember the penultimate. In the penultimate game where you were talking about how the the Delhi streets were all packed, and there was, a lot of security situation and all of that. That's what reminded me, at a later point, that, oh man, feel bad for the Delhi fans.
Yeah, that was with the DC management actually that we had that chat. But Shrikar has just texted in to say he's happy that Harshal won the purple cap and also that he conceded 37 runs in an over to Jadeja, but he hasn't mentioned that. But on that note, guys, on that hopeful note, we're going to go into a break. We've reached just about the midpoint of the year, I would say, because June was when the World Test Championship final happened, right? So we're going to take a break and we will be back with the rest of the year, which included some incredible moments. So don't go anywhere. And we will see you straight after this break, guys. Welcome back from that break. And you're still listening to the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast. I'm here with Uday, Achal, Shrikar, and Arvind. And we're doing a year-end wrap with our amazing Discord community, of which Uday and Achal are also moderators. So guys, really plugging the Discord server here. We'll put a link in the show notes. So please join and we can chat over there. So the World Test Championship happens. India have lost that. And then we went in a bit of a hiatus. We sent our G-string team to Australia. I don't know what we sent to Sri Lanka. And half of them got COVID there as well. We were one COVID case away from probably Rahul Dravid coming out of retirement and opening the batting, which may not have been a bad thing. But yeah, the Sri Lanka trip was weird, man. I don't know, Shrikar, what do you remember of that weird time? Everyone had COVID, the IPL had been abandoned, but we were still playing cricket. It was just a strange time, right?
I know very less of Sri Lanka tour because I didn't follow it much. But I remember one thing is Dhawan captaining the team, and I think few things like I think Ruturaj Gaikwad. I think we had a lot of people debuting. I think Samson finally debuted in ODIs for India. It was a good series though, but I don't remember a lot of things from Sri Lanka because all the glory was in England.
Yeah, the main show was going on in England, and it was, I don't know, there was people making debuts or people falling sick, and it was all a really weird situation to be in. And the tour went on, Sri Lanka went on and won, so congratulations to them. But it was just I don't know, it felt like India had a lot of players. I think Samson was there, but he didn't really make use of that opportunity again, as was the case. Dhawan was the captain. I don't think he's going to play T20 cricket anymore. I think his last game may have been as captain. So another strange situation. Of course, captaincy has been a topic of late as well. But England, the first test match, Nottingham. Again, Joe Root, Shrikar's favorite player, rescues England from another dire situation that KL Rahul has scored 100. After Mayank is injured, KL Rahul has replaced him. He scored 84, not 100 actually. He scored 100 in the next test. And you've got Siraj, you've got Bumrah. It was, I think the first test match was one of missed opportunities. The last day was rained off. We needed 152 runs to win, 9 wickets still standing. It left a lot of people thinking, what if? India, I think I'd watched with Achal one of the most fascinating days of cricket ever, and it was left absolutely tantalizingly poised. And Pujara came in and hit the last ball of the day for 4, which, if you're sitting there as an Indian spectator, you're on the edge of your seat, and this man just flashes and flays it through the covers. And it was the most perfect end to that 4th day of cricket. And the next day was just completely rained out, which was an absolute shame. But I know there are at least 2 of you on this podcast that have wanted to talk about that Lord's Test. So Arvind, I will hand over to you from here to talk us through what went on in that topsy-turvy, completely crazy test. That, if you'd had the Gabba test and the Sydney test in different years, we've had Gabba, Sydney, Ahmedabad, Chennai, and now Lords in the same year. So tell us how this team kept coming up with these special performances and why this one was so special to all Indian fans.
Oh, absolutely. It's an understatement, right? Topsy-turvy. This was the definition of the pinnacle of Test match cricket as it can get. If Gabba was India's batting order coming to the fore in the last innings and showing their chops, it was the bowling unit here with Lords. But starting from the top, the openers, sublime, right? They really showed how to play as openers in England, to England as well, right? Ironically, the cover drives of KL and the hook shots of Rohit were just. I mean, it's sad that it were their demise, but nevertheless, it felt more like they really demonstrated how those shots should actually be played. And it felt like Kohli, was kind of cementing his 40 odd in a in a challenging condition is going to cement my position in the team sort of thing, is laying the foundation from that perspective, I'd say. But Ravindra Jadeja also happens to be kind of an unsung hero there, right? He chipped in a useful knock. India put in a good total, right? 364 in the first innings was nothing to be. But Root being in his sublime form, came in and showed what he could really do. That was really painful, to be honest, right? You had the jubilation of the first innings, and you're like, okay, let's go, let's see what these Indian seamers can do. But that kind of dampened our hope a little bit, especially with seeing Bairstow, hit that half century was especially enraging personally. But sure enough, the second innings, you could see that Bumrah Yorker take Bairstow off on a duck, and you could see his face, and that was really the cathartic moment there. But yeah, England, put up an even better total, but I was just thankful at that point that India put up that first innings total, and there was just this 2-digit lead that gave you some hope that we can crawl back into the reckoning.
No, but talk me through that last wicket, Anderson versus Bumrah. Surely that's one of the defining passages of that test match. And Uday will come to it as well, I'm sure.
Yeah, in fact, if I'd say, if there's one test that a team lost because one bowler was butthurt about getting bouncers, it would have been this game, right? The entire unit's morale was shaken, and they were just a different team after that point. And I don't know, that 18 ball over or whatever, that ridiculously long over.
It was only actually 10. I mean, this was like 10, this was a bit exaggerated. This is the English media putting into our heads that it was 18 balls and Anderson was getting hit on every ball. I mean, you got a bat.
On every ball, but it was just looking at Kohli's expression through that over, I couldn't help but think that maybe there was some level of orchestration. Maybe it was like on the fly extempore stuff, Okay, this guy is, skipping a little bit. Let's throw him a couple of mouses. It's okay if that goes out for a no ball or something. I don't know. But that was quite a pivotal moment. I don't know, Uday, if you had something to add to that.
Yeah, no, I think I actually just happened to come across on Twitter a ball by ball of that 10 ball over. And upon rewatching it, I realized every no ball that Bumrah bowled was a Yorker. So I don't know if there was any intimidatory. We've all seen England cricket Twitter and their journalists whinge about intimidatory bowling as if we're the only ones that have ever done that. But yeah, I think to segue from that, it really set the stage. It was a spicy battle, the bouncer barrage. It got Anderson riled up. I think while they were walking off, he had a few choice words to Kohli and to Bumrah. I think later on he has addressed it, I think on his podcast, Tailenders, where he's just, admitted that he lost the mental battle. It's an understatement. But I think that really set it up, that end of day 3 to what we saw in day 5. End of day 4 or at the beginning of day 5, we were 6 wickets down. Ishant and Pant were at the crease, just 150 odd lead. But then unfortunately Pant fell pretty soon, and so did Ishant. I think when Bumrah and Shami, or when Bumrah came on to join Shami, we were just 180 ahead, which you'd think, where England would think majority of 3 sessions to go, wrap them up for under 200, they could chase this. Clearly the pitch wasn't showing any crazy demons as of yet, but they didn't go for that. They didn't go like, all right, let's get these boys out 10-20 runs and get on with it. They decided to exact revenge, which really backfired on them. I think you could see from the fields, the lengths they were bowling at, that they wanted to, if not hurt, scare Bumrah and Shami to get some revenge for, you know, their storied 100, I don't know, 40 plus capped Anderson. So that's what they did. And Bumrah and Shami, you know, through a combination of evasive action and some, you know, hopeful pulls and hook shots, survived. And then, you know, the run started coming. We were like, all right, 220 lead. Oh, this is good. This is good. We're fine now. 230, 240. And then it just became fun. I think we've had some fantastic moments throughout the year. But that passage of play, once we'd crossed about a lead of 220 until when we eventually declared for, I forget what the exact lead
It was
was.
290 something, 298 or something is what we needed to get.
It was just fun. It was glee. It was glee amongst all our faces, the dressing room. Every time, you know, they would, Bumrah or Shami would swing the bat and it would just edge away for 4 or actually connect and go for a boundary. It was just pure fun. I think, you know, they batted. One of the main kind of themes that made this so special is that in the past, I'd say even as recent as prior to 2021, one of the common themes wherever we went was the opposition tailed wags, ours doesn't. 6 wickets down, that's our innings over. 6 wickets down, you have things like, you know, Sam Curran's heroics last series. The list is endless, but I won't go there. So to see our tail wag, to see Bumrah, who prior to this match had a batting test average of 4 point something, but 4, just hit them and Shami just go for it. I think we reached a point where Shami was on, I think 36 or something, and within 1 over, slaps Moin Ali, I think, for 4 over mid-on, and then a 6 to bring up his 50, a 57 ball 50, mind you. And I think one of the best moments that really, you know, captured it all is after scoring the 50, as if, you know, not even thinking, just as if it was completely normal, takes off his helmet and just raises his bat, celebrates. And then it pans to Kohli and Shastri and Rahane and Pujara, and everyone was just so happy. It was beautiful. It was a perfect way to win that mental battle that kind of ended with lunch being called. And, you know, they were all like, will they, won't they on the declaration? We didn't declare. Came out, gave it to them a little more. I think Shami exacted some more mental pressure by, you know, between balls, just, you know, pulling his pants down at the crease and then adjusting his thigh guard for what seemed like 5 minutes and then continuing getting on with it. We kept them out on the field for, I think, another 20 minutes or so, which I think even just added to the complete meltdown they were going. And then, of course, you know, just under 2 sessions to go, bowl them out. We did end up running it a bit late. I think it was in the last hour, but scorecard will tell you 150 run, 1-run win. Massive, comprehensive.
There are 2 things I want to pick up on this. One, right? Achal is quite a feisty character. I played cricket with him once where I was bowling, and this is the first game I've ever played. He's ever played for my club, right? And I was bowling, and the batsman is plumb LBW, but it's the home umpire and he's not given. Achal is keeping wicket. The next ball, I didn't say anything. So the next ball, I go and it's a bit quicker, and the batsman is bowled. Achal appeals after that. He asks the umpire, how's that? So I know Achal's a bit feisty. So Achal, what did you make of the entire dressing room, on the balcony, all the players on that balcony? Cricket, they say, is a game of 2 against 11 usually. Did it feel like that on that day at Lord's when India were batting in this partnership that was just described?
Yeah, so I read somewhere that the Indian team travels with about 40 plus people who are in the stadium with the 11 who are playing along with the squad and everything. And at that point, it definitely felt like it was 40 plus against England's 11 because the entire team was standing in the balcony clapping. Like I had a friend who was there on day 5 and or the end of day 4, was it? And yeah, like and they said that we could hear the Indian team from the balcony cheering, like, and they were like 150 feet away. So to have that kind of mental pressure on, like, and to consistently put that in England, not just with your 2 tailenders out in the middle, but from your team, that reminds me of school cricket when you have one like really, really good player out in the middle, and that he's just they're just going hammer and tongs, and everyone else is just like, muzzle le rahe hain, as they say. It was exactly that, and I think that's why we wore England down. And to top it off, the cherry on top was the Indian team coming down into the Lord's main room to receive them, like right before lunch. I think that was where England honestly lost them. So there was a case of England collectively losing the mental battle, similar to how Australia had done at the SCG and then before the Gabba test. You build it up and into this whole thing, and it becomes so big that you can't control it beyond a point. I think it was really fun. I think I was there on days 3 and 4 with DJ, and the test up until that point was like pretty tentative. It was evenly poised. Like we saw Pujara and Rahane get us back into like a decent position, but neither of us saw that coming. So when it did happen, I think there was a point in the middle of the day. I think the next day was a Monday when it happened. I stopped working and I told my boss I'm sick, just because like I couldn't believe my eyes and I needed to watch it and do nothing else. Ridiculous scenes.
I think we were all screaming at our televisions by the end of that test match. Srikar, what was surely there was an opportunity for a deodorant company to be using that footage of Kohli on the Lord's balcony, just calmly spraying himself down while everybody waited for this Indian team to declare and wondered whether they had enough time to bowl this team out.
Yeah, I absolutely like one thing is Shami outside just a ball and goes for 4 and we declare. And I just love the ovation they got in the walk area. Lord's walk area. They got a standing ovation. And more than that, they had a business. That was amazing to watch because, the mecca of cricket and everything we speak about it, and we're just doing our thing. That was amazing to watch.
There were a few moments this year like that. You had Siraj hugging Pant, which is one of the famous emojis on our Discord, where Siraj is on top of Pant, and this team sort of just gives you these incredible moments and then you had that bowling performance, which, frankly, we've all watched a lot of cricket, right? Like we're all roughly of the same age. We've all watched a lot of cricket, but when Kohli told his bowlers it should feel like hell out there for 60 overs, and you saw someone like Bumrah, who's quite a calm, collected character. I remember a moment in the 2019 final. I think QDK missed a catcher and it went for 4. And this is right at the end of the game against Chennai. And this is the final of the IPL, which has gone on for 6 weeks. And I saw Bumrah's bowling. He's edged it, and Quinton de Kock has just missed the ball and it's gone for 4. And Bumrah is still calm. For someone like that, even Bumrah has always been quite calm. If you think about it, his celebrations are all very muted and relaxed. But for someone like him to let out that primitive, primeval scream in that first over, getting Rory Burns out, it was, I'm literally going back into the moment and getting emotional because it was nothing like we've ever seen before.
To jump in there, I think one of the memorable things right there, after everything we just talked about, after the Shami and Bumrah innings, the first over of us fielding, you see, a typical new ball field, 3 slips, maybe 4. I think we had a gully in there, some close fielders. After every ball, after it fly past the bat, they would converge like a pack of wolves, just closing in on its prey. The energy was just electric. As Arvind pointed out, this was a test that was a great, advertisement for Test cricket because the momentum went back and forth significantly. I think previous, England were up the first innings, the end of the previous day, one would say, it was England's game to lose. But that moment where all of that energy culminated in the kind of off the cricket, just the body language of the field, it was something that, it's resonates, and it's a memory that sits quite vividly.
Arvind, I'm already getting emotional about this. I'm going to let you do the last bit of this Lord's test because it was, even now going back to it just makes you like, it doesn't feel believable that we won a test match from that position. with Bumrah and Shami's partnership. And I mean, of course, Rahul had scored runs in the first innings, and we would forget that he went out on the Lord's Honours Board, which is an incredible achievement in itself. But the climax to that test match was, I mean, like the Gabba test match, and we'll talk about the Oval test match as well, I'm sure, later. But these were scripts that were being written by a writer of thrillers, and just a writer who had the capability of adding drama, emotion, some romance, some comedy with the Kohli's like deodorant. It was just the complete package, and we've had the complete package in 2021 as we're sticking to Test cricket, right?
Absolutely. Just reliving the moments even as we are talking about it gives me goosebumps, right? And I think that's the definition of such a game. I mean, I honestly feel that, this is one such moment where, speaking to Uday's point about, waiting that 20 minutes and then coming back in, and then, letting England go and dress up and come back all out. India were really dictating terms. That's a stark contrast from how India played away, right? Away games prior to, even 3-4 years ago, we were at the mercy of a bunch of different conditions, right? We controlled portions of the game sessions, but this game was stamping our authority, right? And not just as one lopsided unit. It wasn't just that the batsmen were coming to the fore and they were just carrying things forward. It was an all-round performance. And I mean, to that end, you're talking about honors board. I think they should come up with an honors board for celebrating a team, right? And put India's name out there. That's kind of what I would say to cap this off. Like India played through day 2 on to day 3, and still managed to wrap out England at the end of day 4, I guess. Yeah. So I think it was an all-round. It's a different level altogether, and it showed what. If Australia showed what a G side could do, and England kind of showed, okay, what would happen if you bring some of our top of the line players and manage to do this, something else.
Yeah, it actually ended on day 5 with, I think, only 7 overs remaining when Siraj took that last wicket. It had to be Anderson. Right? It had to be Anderson ending that Lord's Test match. You had Bumrah like a pole vaulter, like punching the air. It was Rohit takes the catch off the stump as well. It was just absolutely, it was all completely ballistic. And of course, after those highs, because we are doing a year-end review, Arvind, I'm going to come to you for the low as well, right? It was 78 all out in the next test innings that we played. So I know we've covered it extensively on the show, but what the hell happens to this team? We have 36 all out in I think it was the 19th of December last year. And a few months later, you have 78 all out at Headingley. Right? What happened? What happened? Too much emotion?
Hey,
Bad toss to lose?
you know how they say, it's what's the word I'm looking for? It's the bad eye type of thing. You gotta get one out.
Evil eye.
Door,
Okay, so we got nazar lag gayi. Fair enough.
Nazar lag gayi.
Fair enough.
But,
fair enough.
Yeah, but that's kind of how I see this. But but yeah, it also kind of shows you can take this English side or the English conditions for granted. You just cannot. And if for I might be jumping ahead of myself, but to be able to then see India turn around in the next game, put that further in perspective, right? That this was a side that would come in and give the home side a run for their money. And again, back to the point, the World Test Championship being a series, a final being a series. This is why, right? You need moments like these to really, not just from a singular test match perspective, but across the series. The series has to seesaw as well, right? For you to stay glued for that whole month and watch the sport. And moments like these, you kind of need it for the sport. So I'm gonna be the bigger man, take a step back and say, okay, this was good for the sport.
Okay, fair enough. And what I think India did still fight. They did still fight in the second innings. They put in a better performance. Rohit and Kohli batted well. I think what this team shows is the strength of conviction that the captain has in his decisions. I know we're talking in hindsight, we're looking at 20 minutes on day 5 at Lord's. saying, okay, you come out, you do the drama with the thigh pad, you spray yourself with deodorant and all of that stuff. But there would be plenty of people, if we hadn't managed to bowl England out on day 5, that would have pointed to that 20 minutes and said, you would have got 2 more overs because the changeover you could have declared. You didn't need the extra runs. You should have just declared at the change and you would have got those 20 extra minutes, because like we saw later on in the year, there was one game where India were only stranded 1 wicket short. And if that had happened at Lords, Kohli would have just taken all sorts of abuse. And cricketing logic wise, you couldn't have faulted it. But the strength of conviction that Kohli has in his decisions, and there's an article, I think, I can't remember, maybe it was Monga or someone, who says that he doesn't second guess himself. Because at that level, you can't second guess yourself. You just have to, for example, when he's questioned as to, are you playing the best? Should you have played this 11? It implies that he's made a decision that is playing not his best 11. So that really irritates him. So, I think that's what all of this Test cricket has shown, that this team has a strength of conviction in its decisions, particularly with Kohli at Lords, right? And this was Kohli's India. It was up at Lords, it was down at Headingley, but it was back up at the Oval. And again, it showed that they stayed patient. They had plans. On day 5, I don't think England lost a wicket in that first session, if I'm not wrong. I don't know. Actually, you've probably got a better memory than me on this, but I don't think on day 5, they were set a lot of runs to get. After, of course, Shardulkar scored 2 50s, including the fastest ever 50 at the Oval. Again, sorry, I'm just skipping to the last day because that's what stays in the memory. But India were like 120 for 7 when Shardulkar comes in and scores the fastest 50 ever made in England. Right, 50 of 32 balls, beating Beefy Botham's record. And it's just, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's one of the other. We'll come to Shardulkar at the end of this thing, but I think going into day 5, I think England was 77 for no loss. It felt like Rory Burns and Hamid had finally figured out how to bat with each other and not just for their places. Burns was actually looking really good towards in the first half of that first session, where he was dead batting most things at his body and flaying boundaries off his legs and on the offside as well. And then Shardulkar comes in with his cheeky cross seamer, gets one to deck away slightly, and Burns is back in the hut. And that's how it starts. I think Shardulkar in that Oval Test was magnificent. 250s, crucial breakthroughs, which then started, opened the door for other bowlers. Incredible. I think Shardul and Siraj did that multiple times, both in Australia and in the England series. And I think that's a very underrated component of our wins there.
Absolutely. And it was, the tail wagged. We can't really call a man who scored 250s in a game the tail, right? And Rishabh Pant scored 50 as well. This is his slowest ever 50. Jadeja batted at 5. Rahane stayed under pressure. He remains under pressure unless it's Boxing Day by the looks of it. And India went 2-1 up, which I think the stat is that they haven't won 2 test matches in a series in England since 1986. And so we were hoping we couldn't have lost the series by that stage, right? So this is the Patadi Trophy, which is different from the Anthony de Mello Trophy, because Anthony de Mello is the home series when India play England, and when they play in England, it's the Patadi Trophy. But the Patadi Trophy we hadn't won since 2007. We had never won 2 test matches in a series since 1986 under Kapil Dev, I think. And everyone looked forward to the Manchester test, and then it got cancelled. And it's been rescheduled for next year. And of course, the whole COVID thing reared its ugly head. The IPL then kicked off. For Delhi Capitals fans, it was a bit of a disaster because we were topping the table. We did top the table by the end of it as well. CSK, of course. I'm okay with that personally. I don't know about the rest of you because I'm a big Dhoni fan, and I was hoping Dhoni would. I was the only one on the show who actually said Dhoni would make the playoffs, and then after that, anything can happen, right? So that was fair. But one of the huge disappointments of the year was the T20 World Cup. I'd say. We didn't have our luck. We didn't win the two tosses against the big two teams. We lost the tosses against New Zealand and Pakistan, and it turned out it was a tournament heavily dictated by tosses. Maybe I'll come to Shrikar on this one to kick off, and then Uday, you can chip in and tell us why this one hurt and why next year won't hurt as much.
Yeah, so the first match was against Pakistan. It was on a Sunday. There's a lot of build up to the match. Everyone in India, at least, were very hyped up about it. We had all the Mocha Mocha ads again. So Rohit and Rahul opening and Shaheen Shah breathing fire, gets both of them out. And then Kohli chips in with not a cameo, but he scores decently. He had a six on mid on, and that was one of the shot of the tournament. And then they just didn't give us a wicket. They didn't even give us a chance because they look so good, especially Rizwan looked so good. We had all the videos of him practicing in the ground with playing those shots, and he just did that in the match also. So it really hurt us. I think for me personally, it hurt more than what is championship final, because we don't want to lose against Pakistan, man. So yeah.
Uday, why can't we play left arm swing bowling? Trent Bolt, Shine Afridi, Mohammad Amir.
We need to get Jaydev Unadkat, Sakaria, Nagswala in every squad in the nets. No, I don't know. I think to answer to address what you said earlier about why this one hurt and maybe won't hurt as much next year. I mean, on paper, everything pointed to us having a good tournament. You know, we had the IPL in the UAE, a whole month or so of all our team, everyone in the squad, they're playing regular cricket at these grounds. We had an IPL actually that was dominated by Indian players, both with the bat and the ball. You know, with the ball, you had even the stars of the show were Harshad Patel and Avesh Khan, when with all of these foreign stars, in the squads. Our batsmen, we had Kohli, Rohit, Rahul, all in fine form. I think the expectations were high. Technically it was a home World Cup for us, despite being held in the UAE, whereas, next year's being held in Australia, you'd think we're not as favored as we would be in this one. So it did hurt also in just kind of the magnitude of how badly we lost those two games. Both of them, it seemed like we just couldn't get runs on the board. It was a frustrating watch, but hopefully, just 10 months between this one and the next one, we can bounce back. Seems like we only do seem to perform when our backs are against the wall. So hopefully that does it for us.
Yeah, it was a tame end to what should have been a big campaign, right? And I also want to mention that there were some pretty special moments in the women's game, and of course we talk a lot about the men's game, and it's only fair that we also talk about the women's game. I think a century by Smriti Mandhana in the pink ball test, fantastic. Shefali Verma's 96 against England in the one-off test match that we played in England. What a talent she has. I mean, just absolutely brilliant. Absolute shame that she didn't get to 100. Sneh Rana's basically did what Ashwin and Vihari did at Sydney. She did that in the test match to save that test match and keep India alive. India breaking Australia's 26 ODI winning streak with Jhulan Goswami hitting a boundary. The magic ball by Shikha Pandey to bowl Alyssa Healy. I mean, we could do a whole different and separate show just on the women's game. There was so many moments, and I mean, I know there's a domestic tournament that's ongoing. I know, Achal, you're following it fairly closely as well. Did you have anything to add? Maybe even around the 100 and the BBL, where Harman won the player of the tournament? Because I think Jemmy and Smriti and those guys did pretty well at the 100 as well, right?
Yeah, I think Harman had a pretty middling 100. It felt like she was struggling to adapt to the format just a little bit. But Jemmy, I think, came out all guns blazing. She had multiple match-winning performances, and I think kind of defined how that the 100 tournament should be played from a batting perspective. I think since it's a new tournament, everyone was like, no one had played that kind of in that kind of setup before. No one knew how to deal with those 10 ball overs and everything. But I think Jemmy, especially trying to bounce back from a long period where she'd been out of the Indian team, not getting game, carrying drinks, that kind of thing. It was incredible to see, and to see, I think, in general, the Indian women's team go from strength to strength within, like, between series as well, was awesome. One of the things that stood out to me was how many young women cricketers we have coming up that look so good. They look so organized at the crease. They know what they're doing. Pooja Vasrakar, Sneh Rana, Yastika Bhatia is really, really good at the crease. And yeah, it fills me with optimism. And I it's scary for me to say this as an Indian fan, especially given what happened at the T20 World Cup this year. But all signs, everything pointing upwards and onwards, all good signs. I just hope the BCCI sorts their junk out and organizes the women's IPL before it's too late. I think that the time is now. The time is ripe. Get a clue, man. Like Dada, try stay off Boria shows and do some work for a change.
I read a crazy quote by Dada this week, which said that only tension in life is given by wife and girlfriend. It was not or, it was and. Like, okay, Dada. Anyway, but the other interesting thing was Mithali Raj got to 10,000 runs. She beat Charlotte Edwards. You also had Julian Goswami, who I think is just auctioned off the first ever NFT by an Indian cricket player, which is a 2017 jersey, which was interesting, I thought. Yeah, it was an incredible year for so many reasons. And I think, unless you guys have anything else, I think we've gone more than an hour now. So as always, without Ashwin on the show to control me, I've overrun the time limit. I can't help it, man. I just love chatting cricket with you guys, and you guys are big fans of cricket, clearly, and you know a lot. So it's absolutely brilliant. But what I'm going to ask you to do is two things. The first of which is, I want you to close your eyes and think of one moment that has stood out for you from 2021. And I want you to type that into the chat box independently and then read that out. I'm hoping they're all different moments. So just one moment, not a passage of play, not a match, a single moment that defines 2021 for you. And it would be great if they're different moments, but if they're the same, then what do you do? I'll do the same as well. Why not?
Do we hit enter at the same time, or how does this work?
Has everyone typed that moment? Okay, we're going to hit enter on 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, I'm going to read this out. Shrikar says, Pant finishing with a 4. Arvind says, Rishabh Pant looking upward at the sky after stealing the Gaba game. Uday says, Pant hitting the winning runs at the Gaba. Achal says, Washi and Shardul batting out of their skins at the Gaba. And I say, Rishabh Pant is the star. I think we have a unanimous winner. We can talk all we like about Lords. We can talk all we like about the Oval. Ahmedabad, all of that is fine. But that win with Rishabh Pant, and of course it had to be the Rishabh Pant show where this happened. It's the Gabba. And you know what they said? See you at the Gabba, mate. We saw them at the Gabba. We came, we saw, and we conquered. But it was just brilliant. The other thing that I now want you guys to do. Okay, we put out a poll. saying, who is the Indian Test cricketer of the year? Who is your Indian Test cricketer of the year? Right. And of course, we're still playing a Test match, and KL Rahul has just scored 100 in the Test match. So maybe that skews things a little bit. And like Kohli hasn't scored his 71st yet. It could still happen in 2021, fingers crossed. But why don't you, Uday, I'll come to you. Tell me who your Test player of the year is, who your Test player of the year is, and why. Because I don't think we have enough data for a T20 player of the year. Or maybe we do, but frankly, we love Test cricket on this show. We love the IPL, but it's been a year for Test cricket. Let's be honest. It's been a great year for a Test cricket fan. So who's your Test player of the year?
Look, I'm sure it's a close call for everyone thinking of this question between two names, Rohit and Ashwin, but I think I'm going to have to side with Rohit just because I think we haven't had stability at the top for a while. I think prior to that Rohit Gill 100 partnership, we hadn't had a 100 partnership in years. Forget overseas, just 100 partnerships. So, sorry, I meant overseas. I think we had Mayank and Rohit last year, but having him at the top where he belongs, I think he even had that ad that went viral, like opening hi karunga. It's been great. It's finally given us that, that balance, who he partners. That's a conversation for a different story, but he's had a fantastic year. And I think he just narrowly beats out Ashwin, probably because of no fault of Ashwin. He was benched the whole England series. Rohit has been shining everywhere he's been playing, so he gets it for me.
Very good, Achal. Your pick?
Yeah, Rohit for me as well. And I think beyond just adding stability to, the top of the order and just being another calm head on the field, another leadership figure on the field, which I think was very much needed given that we had so many young players playing this year. I think the cricket nerd in me is just really awed by the technical changes he's made to his game to be a successful Test opener. He's done things from a technical perspective that I haven't seen a lot of openers in this day and age doing. For example, covering for the outswing in England, leaving balls just based on line and release, which you don't barely see people do anymore. And for me, that is just it's been a hallmark of his batting this year. Whether he's done it whether he's opening in Australia, whether he's sweeping the living daylights out of Jack Leach in Chennai, or he's just dead batting James Anderson for hour after hour. I think from the cricket purist in me, the batting purist in me is just really, really overawed by the technical changes he's made and just up-leveled his game.
Very good. He scored 906 runs in 2021 with an average of 47.7, striking at 48.2, a highest of 161, which, as you said, came against England, Jack Leach and co. 450s, 200s. Decent. Shrikar, are you on the Rohit train, the Ashwin train, the Pant train, the Shardul train, or are you catching a flight?
Yeah, it's very tough to pick between Ashwin and Rohit because both of them had a sensational year. But I think I am leaning towards Ashwin. I mean, although he has not played a lot of matches this year because we didn't see him playing in England. So, but I think Ashwin gets my vote because he scored 337 runs and he took 52 wickets. So I think my vote goes
including
to
100 and some crucial runs against New Zealand. We haven't actually talked about Ajaz Patel's 10th, but we talked about that very recently on the show. So yeah, but so you've gone with Ashwin. So we now have 2 votes for Rohit. Shrikar has voted for Ashwin. Arvind, if you go to Ashwin as well, then I'll have to have a casting vote, and that's going to make it very interesting. But I'll let you. I won't influence you before that. Who's your vote for?
Ashwin all the way.
Oh yes.
He's a Chennai town boy, and all power to him. And to me, among Shrikar has spoken really well about sort of his stats, but just the mental fortitude, man. Like, guy has gone through things that it's really hard to explain off field. But to really be able to project the way he does, I mean, the YouTube channel part, those things aside, he's a champion player. And there was a recent article that Harsha Bogle had tweeted about his prep and the amount of injury that his body is prone to. I highly recommend, I'll post a link here, but you'll have to catch up to that thread that gives you a whole other perspective about why he prepares so much and his focus. All out, Ashwin.
There's a Sid Monga interview that came out on Monday, I think, last week, which is,
Yeah,
I
that's
think,
the one.
literally taken the cricket world by storm, where he said his body didn't hold up and he had to prepare. He had adductor injuries, and we tried to fix one thing, something else went wrong.
Correct.
People said that he wasn't working hard, and people don't realize how much goes into bowling off spin. So we've got 2 votes for Rohit. We've got 2 votes for Ashwin. 2021. I think the test player of the year for me is going to be Ashwin. And I think Rohit is the most improved player. I think he was brilliant and he played a huge part in the Indian team, not just with the bat, but with his catching in the slips. His catching was brilliant. But I mean, Ashwin, now I think our Ashwin Garg, mentioned on the show recently that I think in the second test, he took 4 for 8 in the second innings, and you don't even mention it anymore. You're just like, yeah, that's just par for the course for Ashwin. And that's absolutely insane. If Jimmy Anderson took 4 for 8, even it was a green seaming wicket on Headingley, the English media would be exploding like this is the greatest bowler to ever play the game and all of this stuff. Whereas in India, we're just like, okay, he's taken 4 for 8, whatever. Okay. Ajaz Patel took 10. That's literally our attitude. Right. And it's surreal. And the man has scored 100 on a Chennai pitch, which everybody has said is substandard for cricket. And he's just turned up there. This is my home ground. I'm going to show you how to bat on it. And add to that, like, we are all people who run a podcast on the side of our day jobs, right? This guy runs a YouTube channel and on the side of his day. So I have to give it to Ashwin. And you feel for him. He hasn't played a single test on that tour of England, and he still stayed mentally stable. He's come back and delivered what he had to do in the New Zealand test matches. He's made his way back into the ODI squad, into the T20 squad, which is ballistic. You would have never thought of that a few years ago, right? And of course, it shouldn't affect the test game, but I think also maybe I've got recency bias with that Sid Monga article, and I mean, it was just a brilliant article to read, and we will put a link to it. But for me, the player of the year has to be Ashwin. Achal?
While we're talking about the Sid Monga article, I think one of the things we should highlight is people or journalism, I guess, that has helped us consume or stay in touch with Indian cricket better. I think this year, the 3 people who really did it for me in different ways, of course, are Sid Monga with his writing. And that interview with Ashwin just caps it off. He's been brilliant throughout the year, starting with, the pieces he wrote about Siraj and then the Gabba win and so on and so forth. He's been brilliant. Another one who's been absolutely amazing, especially for someone like me who loves inside info and just to know what's going on behind the scenes, is Bharat Sundaresan, who was at the nets literally every day, tweeting pictures, videos, and just taking offhanded funny happenings and comments and posting them on Twitter, making cricket. It felt like a little bit like I had some more access, and that was amazing as a cricket fan. And number 3, Danish Karthik, for a pretty amazing debut in the com box. He was very erudite, very well spoken, really good tactician from the looks of it, that dissects the game really well, very insightful. Which only makes me wonder, what will Ashwin be like in the com box when he's done?
That's if he chooses to go to the com box and not into the coaching setup, because there were a few words that he had for the coaches. And I think Ravi Shastri has responded to one of them saying, I think when he felt that he'd been thrown under the bus when Kuldeep was declared the number 1 spinner, and Ravi Shastri said that I told the bus driver to stop a few feet short, which is, it's classic Shastri. I mean, it's just crazy. But I mean, that's all the on-field action, right? And of course, Bharat has been on our show talking about that Australia tour and recounting all of that. Yeah, it was. I mean, so I think we have crowned Ashwin our Edges and Sledges Player of the Year, which is brilliant. Arvind, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, how we say it's been a batsman's game, so I'm glad to see a bowler getting that. But to top it off, if there's an honorable mention, I'd give that to Mohammad Siraj. The guy wears his heart on his sleeves, and we've gotten him a class of bowler that comes very few and far between. So to be able to see that and just the way he carries himself in the field, it's just amazing.
He gets under the opposition's skin a little bit, doesn't he? Without abuse, he just is in your face. He's aggressive, and he's had a tough time as well. I mean, we go back to the Australia series. His dad passed away while he was in quarantine, couldn't go back for the last rites. It was all Natarajan couldn't go back for the birth of his child, and it was. I mean, it's been an insane year. It's been COVID affected, but we've had some incredible cricket, and I think it's a testament to the fact that this podcast, which was meant to be less than an hour, has now gone to an hour and a half. So I think we should probably wrap up now because it's been a great year. It's been 2021 has given us so many joyful memories. It's given us some disappointments, but I think overall, when we look back at it, we look back at it with joy and happiness. And I think we thank our listeners for being with us. You guys for listening to us. I mean, without the listeners, we are nothing. And I mean, we've managed to keep this going through the lockdown. So thank you guys for sticking with us, and we will be back in 2022 after the first test is over, when hopefully India have recorded a 1-0 lead in the series against South Africa. We will see. Don't want to jinx it just yet. But like always, you can find us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We're at One Tip, One Hand. I know all of these guys write in often. And join our Discord, because this was a Discord exclusive, I suppose, that in a way you could say, because the idea came about, it was put out on Discord, and we managed to put it together all in less than 48 hours. So that is the power of the Edges and Sledges Discord community. Achal has kindly allowed Spotify users to rate podcasts on Spotify. So I think we've got 41 ratings, and we're currently rated 4.9. So I think we need a few more ratings to round that up to 5, right? Achal, I'm guessing it's a rounding up system, right? Anyway, so guys, happy New Year. We will see you in 2022. So until then, take care, stay safe, and keep listening to the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast.
IVM